Good afternoon, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Right Side Broadcasting coming to you with some breaking news. President Trump has issued a statement, a harshly critical statement of Steve Bannon, the former campaign head and White House chief strategist, in which, among other things, he said Steve Bannon has lost his mind and Steve Bannon did very little to contribute to President Trump's election victory. We're going to talk about that statement and read you the statement in a couple moments here. And also, this statement comes in response to a story that came out this morning, which said that Steve Bannon is going to be critical of Donald Trump in a new book that's coming out about President Trump's administration. And in the book, reportedly, Bannon is quoted as saying some pretty harsh things about Donald Trump. So President Trump, seemingly in response to that report about these Bannon quotes in an upcoming book, has come out with a statement on Bannon. So we're going to catch you up, bring you all the details, and really want to hear what you think about this new step in the Bannon-Trump relationship. But some pretty harsh words from President Trump today. So let's start with the President Trump statement that came out shortly in the last hour and read you that statement. This is a statement from President Trump. And the actual, let me give you a bigger, there's the actual statement. So let's read the statement and then we can go from there. I'm going to disappear for a second while I read the statement. Hang on a second. There we go. The statement from President Trump is, Steve Bannon has nothing. Before I do this, I just want to make sure you can hear me, okay? The actual sounds like the sound is good. Okay, here's the statement that came out from President Trump. Steve Bannon has nothing to do with me or my presidency. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. Steve was a staffer who worked for me after I had already won the nomination by defeating 17 candidates, often described as the most talented field ever assembled in the Republican Party. Now that he's on his own, Steve is learning that winning isn't as easy as I made it look. Steve had very little to do. Again, Steve had very little to do with our historic victory, which was delivered by the forgotten men and women of this country. Yet Steve had everything to do with the loss of a Senate seat in Alabama held for more than 30 years by Republicans. Steve doesn't represent my base. He's only in it for himself. Steve pretends to be at war with the media, which he calls the opposition party, yet he spent his time at the White House leaking false information to the media to make himself seem far more important than he was. It's the only thing he does well. Steve was rarely in a one-on-one meeting with me and only pretends to have had influence to fool a few people with no access and no clue, whom he helped write phony books. We have many great Republican members of Congress and candidates who are very supportive of the Make America Great Again agenda. Like me, they love the United States of America and are helping to finally take our country back and build it up, rather than simply seeking to burn it down. So some very harsh words there for Steve Bannon from President Trump. And that statement, again, came out like in the last hour. And, if you hadn't been following this morning, you might be thinking, like, so where did this statement come from? Why did President Trump release this statement today? Well, it seems to be in response to a report I'm going to show you now that came out this morning. For example, I know the Drudge Report had this story prominently linked on their page this morning, but it's from The Guardian and it says Trump Tower, and there might have been other versions of the story in other publications as well, but this story says Trump Tower meeting with Russians was treasonous, Bannon says in explosive book. So let's get some of the details about what Bannon reportedly says in this upcoming book. According to The Guardian, Donald Trump's former, and again, this story came out this morning, and President Trump's statement about Steve Bannon is presumably in response to this story coming out. Donald Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, has described the Trump Tower meeting between the president's son and a group of Russians during the 2016 election campaign as treasonous and unpatriotic, according to an explosive new book seen by The Guardian. So The Guardian has seen the book, which is coming out. Bannon, speaking to author Michael Wolff, warned that the investigation into alleged collusion with the Kremlin will focus on money laundering and predicted they're going to crack Don Jr. like an egg on national TV. Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House, which is the name of the forthcoming book, reportedly based on more than 200 interviews with the president, his inner circle, and players in and around the administration. So this is somebody who wrote this book who interviewed the president, inner circle, people in the administration. This book is one of the most eagerly awaited political books of the year. In it, Wolff lifts the lid on a White House lurching from crisis to crisis amid internecine warfare, with even some of Trump's closest allies expressing contempt for him. Bannon, who was chief executive of the Trump campaign in its final 3 months, then White House chief strategist for 7 months before returning to the right-wing Breitbart News, is a central figure in the nasty cutthroat drama, quoted extensively, often in salty language. Bannon is particularly scathing in this book about a June 2016 meeting involving Trump's son Don Jr., son-in-law Jared Kushner, then campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya at Trump Tower in New York. Here's what Bannon says, supposedly in the book. I'll get to that in the next paragraph. Well, so you know about the meeting. A trusted intermediary had promised documents that would incriminate Hillary Clinton, but instead of alerting the FBI to a potential assault on American democracy by a foreign power, Trump Jr. replied in an email, "I love it." The meeting was revealed by the New York Times. And so now we're getting to the Bannon quotes. The meeting was revealed by the New York Times in July last year, prompting Trump Jr. to say no consequential material was produced. Soon after, Wolff writes in this forthcoming book, Bannon remarked mockingly, "The 3 senior guys in the campaign thought it was a good idea to meet with a foreign government inside Trump Tower in the conference room on the 25th floor with no lawyers. They didn't have any lawyers. Even if you thought that was not treasonous or unpatriotic or bad S, and I happen to think it's all of that, you should have called the FBI immediately." Bannon went on, Wolff writes, to say that if any such meeting had to take place, it should have been set up in a Holiday Inn in Manchester, New Hampshire, with your lawyers who meet with these people. Any information, Bannon said, could then be dumped down to Breitbart or something like that, or maybe some other more legitimate publication. Bannon added, "You never see it, you never know it, because you don't need to, but that's the brain trust they had." Bannon also speculated that Trump Jr. had involved his father in the meeting. The chance that Don Jr. did not walk those Jumos up to his father's office on the 26th floor is 0. And there's some other Bannon stuff in here. Let's see here. Bannon says here, if you look up at the top here, you realize where this, he's talking about the Mueller investigation, you realize where this is going, Bannon is quoted as saying, "This is all about money laundering. Mueller chose senior prosecutor Andrew Weissman first, and he is a money laundering guy. Their path to effing Trump goes right through Paul Manafort, Don Jr., and Jared Kushner. It's as plain as a hair on your face." Scorning when he's then he also says, Bannon continues, "It goes through Deutsche Bank and all the Kushner S. The Kushner S is greasy. They're going to go right through that. They're going to roll those 2 guys up and say, play me or trade me." Scorning apparent White House insouciance, Bannon reaches for a hurricane metaphor. They're sitting on a beach trying to stop a Category 5. So anyways, this is so basically we have a story here where Bannon is quoted in this book that's coming out with some critical quotes about the Trump about President Trump and Don Jr. and Jared Kushner. Now, those quotes, I couldn't tell, are they from an interview or was like the author of the book sitting in on some meeting in the White House where, for all you know, Bannon was saying this stuff to Trump or Trump's people, to them, and Wolff was just sitting there writing all of this down. So I can't really say there. But anyways, Bannon, there's this book coming out. Bannon has some negative quotes in there about President Trump, and President Trump has responded with this statement. And I want to just, real quick before I get to your comments, write to me if you have comments, by the way. In a minute, we're going to get to your comments. What do you think about President Trump's statement, about Bannon's quotes about President Trump and his administration in the upcoming book? Again, this statement, as you can see right here, this is from President Trump today. It says, "Steve Bannon has nothing to do with me or my presidency. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. Now that he's on his own, Steve is learning that winning isn't as easy as I made it look. Steve had very little to do with our historic victory. But Steve had everything to do with the loss of a Senate seat in Alabama. Steve pretends to be at war with the media, yet he spent his time at the White House leaking false information to the media to make himself seem far more important than he was. It's the only thing he does well. Steve was rarely in a one-on-one meeting with me and only pretends to have had influence to fool a few people with no access and no clue, whom he helped write phony books. President Trump also said Steve Bannon is just, rather than supporting the MAGA agenda, Steve Bannon is simply seeking to burn it all down. So some harsh words for President Trump from Steve Bannon after that report that came out this morning that Steve Bannon makes some negative quotes about Trump and the Trump administration in a forthcoming book about the Trump administration. So what do you think about this? I want to hear from you. At Lookner, write to me on Twitter, at Lookner. What do you think about all this? I'd love to get some of your comments. And this is Right Side Broadcasting. So thank you to the moderators for being with us here today. We have Guinevere, and Barbara Braley and Roger Vega. Thank you all for being here. And so give me a shout. Let me know what you think about this. Really Rick writes in. Really Rick says, I support the president, but to say Steve Bannon was just a staffer who had little to do with the election and barely met with Trump is just plain ridiculous at the least and a downright lie at worst. So really Rick supports the president, but doesn't agree with the president's statements that Steve Bannon had so little to do with the election. Let's see here. Garrett says, did Bannon admit the statements or was this just based on a new book? So I don't know if Bannon, I haven't heard that Bannon today has said, oh, this book is accurate. But Wolff, this person Wolff who wrote the book, supposedly had very good access, Michael Wolff, to the White House and was actually there at the White House for an extended amount of time and actually did interviews with President Trump and other people at the White House. So, but I haven't heard comments about Bannon's Bannon. I haven't heard any statements from Bannon today commenting about whether the quotes in the book are accurate or not. I've heard nothing about that. Let's see here. Linda Belk writes in, I read this earlier. Thomas 1774 Payne on Twitter had said, no, Steve Bannon did not turn on Donald Trump. Another move by fake news to stop MAGA. Michael Wolff, who they got their quote from, is a fraud and has been caught many times in the past for making up quotes. More fake news. Evade Money writes in, ouch, can he take a hint or too many knocks to the head got Stevie confused still? So we are taking your comments here, hearing what you have to say in this about this President Trump, Steve Bannon. I guess you could say feud, but it's not like Steve Bannon came out this morning and said anything new about the president. What happened is this story was released with some saying that this new book is going to have some quotes in it that are critical of the Trump administration. Again, it seems like the big negative one from this article is that Steve Bannon said that the meeting in Trump Tower between Jared and Paul Manafort and Don Jr. and the Russian woman who they thought might have some incriminating information on Hillary, Bannon said that was treasonous and unpatriotic and bad S. And also he claimed that President Trump must have known about the meeting. Now at the same time he's quoted as saying something. He's quoted later as saying like, let me show you this. Said, oh, even if you thought that this was not treasonous or unpatriotic or bad S, I happen to think it's all of that. You should have called the FBI immediately. Now, I don't know if he's saying that, if Alexander Wolff is saying that Steve Bannon said that in an interview, or was Alexander Wolff maybe sitting in a meeting in the White House where Steve Bannon was saying this to other people in the White House? I don't know. It could have been saying it to President Trump, for all you know. And also he said, but he did also say, Bannon went on to say that if any such meeting had to take place, it should have been set up at a Holiday Inn in Manchester with your lawyers who meet with these people. Any information, he said, could then be dumped down to Breitbart or something like that. So on the one hand, he's saying he thinks it's treasonous, but on the other hand, he's saying, well, if you're going to do it, you do it this way. So you'd have to get a little more of the conversation to know how he really feels about this, because this suggests that he thinks like there's a world in which, well, we do have the meeting, we just handle it a different way. So, these quotes are taken out of context right now. I think you kind of have to be there to know exactly what his attitude was about this whole thing. But anyways, that story came out today in the morning that those quotes were going to be in an upcoming book, and then President Trump released his statement about Steve Bannon, which we've been looking at. So what do you think about this? Let me know. We're taking your comments here. The floor is open at Lookner on Twitter. Shane is right says, the POTUS statement does not look authentic. It looks like someone is trying to be POTUS. Bannon has been on the radio every morning for the past several months praising Trump and pushing the MAGA agenda. So just so you know, folks, this statement it basically couldn't be more widely reported. I am highly confident that this statement is accurate. Let me just show you real quick some of the people reporting this statement. Washington Post, CNN, Sam Stein, Jennifer Jacobs, who's a pool reporter for Bloomberg, and she covers the White House. She has the statement too. So she has a statement. She originally has a typed copy. Originally, I believe the statement was released by the press secretary. So it's possible that members of the press were sent this statement in like typed form or something like that. But so many people are reporting the statement. I don't have doubts that the statement actually did come from the White House. Because somebody like Jennifer Jacobs, who actually is a full-time White House pool reporter, is not going to say, hey, here's the statement from the White House without knowing it's from the White House. So I think you can be confident that it really did come from the White House. Let's see here. TAP Gaming says, has it crossed anyone's mind that these quotes are from an unreleased book so it can be debunked easily? So now I don't doubt that the quotes are in the book because The Guardian said they had a copy of the book. But what you might be saying, Jay Bones, is, well, Steve Bannon might just say, well, I didn't say that stuff. Now, maybe Michael Wolff has tapes of what was said, I don't know, or notes, but then if it's just notes, Steve Bannon could deny it. So it'll be interesting to see, do we hear anything like that from Steve Bannon? Or maybe Steve Bannon doesn't deny any of the quotes. Miss Jensen writes in, nobody said draining the swamp was going to be easy or pretty. Eventually, the snakes raise their ugly heads. Hashtag drain the swamp. Blessed says, after listening to the words that is in that book, it does sound like Bannon is just someone who is trying to get back credibility. My concern today is President Trump not allowing DACA. Don't care about a grown man's hissy fit. Now, I will say that, the Bannon quotes, it's possible that, when Bannon says the meeting was treasonous or whatever, that's something I could see. Say Steve Bannon was in a meeting with President Trump and Don Jr. and some other people in the White House. I could see a world in which Steve Bannon says, we shouldn't take that meeting, it's treasonous. And he means it for his closed audience. It's something he says for those people in the room, not for the press. The problem is, apparently, Michael Wolff was in the room or had access to that information. Now, maybe what happened is Steve Bannon said that in a small meeting where it was just White House people, but someone in that meeting leaked those quotes to Michael Wolff. So I don't know, Steve Bannon could have said that in an interview with Michael Wolff. He could have said it in a meeting with Michael Wolff present, or he could have said it in a small meeting where Michael Wolff wasn't there, but someone there who didn't like Steve Bannon could have released it. So here's something that could have happened. We've heard that there's a Jared Kushner-Steve Bannon feud. Maybe there's a small meeting between Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner and a couple other people, and Steve Bannon says, dudes, this meeting was treasonous, you shouldn't have had it. And and it's just a meeting for private people. And then Jared Kushner or one of Jared Kushner's allies says, I'm going to make Steve Bannon look bad. I'm going to release this quote to Michael Wolff. You don't know, so it's hard to say where this quote came from and what the context was. And also, if it came from a small meeting, let's say it came from a meeting where Bannon was talking to Jared Kushner and a couple other people. Maybe in a meeting like that, Bannon says, that meeting was treasonous. And he doesn't really mean it. I mean, sometimes when you're talking to your friends, you can exaggerate things to make a point, that kind of thing. So, I think you'd have to have more of if this quote was leaked from a private meeting, say between Bannon and Jared Kushner and a couple other people, I think you'd have to have a little more context to know, does Bannon really think it was treasonous, or was he saying that to be critical of, Jared Kushner or whatever? So we don't really have context for how this was said and where it was said and who it was said to, and was it meant to ever go public? We don't have context for that. Bruce Rosenthal says photos of Bannon appear to show he has some large head discolorations. Hard to say without medical info, but maybe he has some brain issues like brain melanoma. I can't speak to that. I'm not a doctor, so I have no idea. Jeremy Miller says, to me, it doesn't sound like Bannon turned. He just stated the obvious, and plenty of us are not happy with the Javanka part of the presidency. Remember Syria? And I do think it's important to note that, I don't know how the reporting of this is going to be, but it's not like Steve Bannon had a big press conference this morning and he released these statements about President Trump. What happened is that a book is coming out about the Trump administration, and a story came out about the book, and the quotes from the story are from, earlier in the year. And for all we know, these are not quotes that Steve Bannon made to the author directly. These quotes could have been leaked by someone else who knows and deals with Steve Bannon. So we don't know any of that. Let's see. Oh, John PS30 made a donation and said he sent me Steve Bannon's tweet. I didn't know Steve Bannon had tweeted out. Let me see. Did he tweet out? Does he have a Twitter, Steve Bannon? Let's see here. It's not verified. I don't know. Some people are saying that Steve Bannon tweeted, but I think I vaguely remember going through this before and wondering if it was his real Twitter address. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm not sure. And John, I'm trying to find, let's see, where you sent me something here. Let's see. I found it, John, so let me find, I'm looking it up here. Is this a real account? Oh, it says Breitbart.com. Well, if this is a real account of Steve Bannon, and I'm not sure if it is, it's not verified, but who knows? There's a post from 2 hours ago saying this is total fake news and taken out of context. Don't believe the liberal propaganda machine. But is that really his? Is that really his account? I don't know if this is account. I don't know. Yeah, this is So people in the chat room are saying that's a fake account. Yeah, several people. Yeah, a number of people in the chat room are saying that's not a real account. It's a fake account. He's not on Twitter. So until I hear strong evidence to the contrary, I'm going to assume that was a fake account. And I believe we had this same conversation like a month or two ago on a broadcast. I can't remember. So, and certainly the press isn't reporting that Bannon tweeted about it, which would suggest that they think it's a fake account as well. Let's see. Snowball says Bannon does not have a Twitter. That's another. A number of people have written in and talked in the chat room saying Bannon doesn't have a Twitter. Let's see here. Bruce Rosenthal says Trump's statement also indicates Bannon leaked. Maybe Kelly determined that to be the case and advocated for Bannon being let go. So in the statement here, let me get that fake tweet off. Well, I think it's a fake tweet, but let me show you. Yeah, in the statement it says at the bottom, the Trump statement, he spent his time in the third paragraph, he spent his time in the White House leaking false information to the media. So the statement, President Trump did say that Steve Bannon was leaking false info while he was in the White House. We are taking your comments here at Right Side Broadcasting. At Lookner on Twitter is where to write to me to comment on this story. By the way, we are viewer supported, so if you enjoy our coverage, if you like that we're giving full coverage to this and that we're an alternative to the mainstream media, please consider making a donation. You can donate to us by going to the bottom of the YouTube chat and click on the $sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat. There's a little square $sign there. We use donations to stay on the air. We're a small company, and your support is what allows us to be on the air. So thank you for your support. You can also donate at rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. And a big thank you again to the moderators for moderating the chat today. Let me get to some more of your comments here. Let's see. Jeremy Miller says, Jeremy Miller and Shane is right wanted me to show Mike Cernovich's tweet on this. So I'll show you that because they wanted me to show it. Hang on one second, guys. Let me get this up on the screen here. One sec, please, while I get this up. It says, Mike Cernovich, conservative commentator and journalist, said, I don't believe Steve Bannon called Don Jr.'s meeting treason. Bannon needs to get on Periscope and refute this terrible smear piece which harms everyone and helps no one. That's really, that's really the big quote in there. The big quote in this article is saying that the meeting is treasonous and, sorry, let me show you the article. The big quote here is saying the meeting was treasonous and what else? And unpatriotic and bad S. But without saying it's treasonous and unpatriotic, I don't know if there'd be much of a story here. That's really the big quote. Okay, getting some more of your comments. Becky Parker says, why are all these real Twitter accounts following that Steve Bannon account on Twitter? Well, maybe they don't know it's fake. Or maybe they like following an account that sort of like imagines what Steve Bannon's account might be like. I don't know. A lot of times a lot of even verified accounts, sometimes people follow a ton of people and don't really, curate very well who they're following. So they might follow that account and just never pay attention to it. Let's see. Bruce Rosenthal says, can you find out if Sebastian Gorka has any comments about this yet? I haven't seen anything from him, but if I see anything, I'll let you know. Edward Briley writes in, this is some kind of strategy between Trump and Bannon in some way. Either of these people are stupid. They know what, either of these people are not, neither of these people are stupid. They know what they're doing. I will tell you a trap of some type is being set for the Democrats, the mainstream media, or both. I will say this, I would not be surprised, even though this happened today, that if like, a month or two from now, we hear that Steve Bannon and Donald Trump are talking on the phone, so, maybe not, but it seems like they have this kind of relationship where they've had some issues before, and then President Trump got rid of Steve Bannon at the same time. From the reports I've heard, they've been actively talking a lot over the last several months. Snowball says, remember what Scaramucci said about Bannon? Oh, and there's the, he sent me the Scaramucci quote, which is where it said like, it said, Scaramucci also told me that unlike other senior officials, he had no interest in media attention. No, Scaramucci said, I'm not Steve Bannon. I'm not trying to suck my own sea. I'm not trying to build my own brand off the effing strength of the president. I'm here to serve the country. Now, Scaramucci actually posted today, after President Trump's statement, I think he posted something on Twitter saying something like, see, I told you this about Steve Bannon before. So look, Scaramucci said, I said what I said in the summer. Take out the expletives and pay closer attention. By the way, President Trump is doing a great job. So Scaramucci there is saying that like the stuff President Trump said in his statement today about Steve Bannon, wanting to leaking to the press and wanting to make himself seem important and being in it for himself. Scaramucci is saying I said what he said this in the summer, but he just had a lot of expletives in it. And then also, Donald Trump Jr. just posted about in the last hour, minus the foul language, the mooch pretty much nailed it about Steve Bannon. So that's what Donald Trump Jr. said just about 53 minutes ago. Thanks, Snowballs, for that message. Mudwack says, looks like fake news. Garrett says, the Trump Tower meeting about Dirty Hillary was 2 months before Bannon started work for the White House, right? I'm not sure about the timing of that. Bannon joined the campaign in August of 2016. And then that meeting, when was that meeting? June. Yeah, so the meeting was before he joined the campaign. Adriana Stuget says, did you actually get an email with this statement from Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, or are you using indirect information from other media? I would like to see this original press statement in JPEG form as coming from the White House. Thus far, I can't verify this is genuine. I have seen copies of it saying from Sarah Sanders, from the press secretary. And again, it's being reported by so many people with close ties to the White House that I am 100% confident that the White House released this statement. Here's one. Here's one where it says, from Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. This is the political correspondent at Business Insider, but I can just go through the different people reporting this. I mean, it's like, AP had a story on it. All the major networks has a story on it. NBC News reported it. USA Today, Jennifer Jacobs. Jennifer Jacobs is a pool reporter in the White House. She's not going to say that there's a statement coming from the president unless she has confirmed it is from the president. So I think you can be confident that this statement really did come from the president. I'm sure, by the way, it will be asked about in the White House press briefing. Thank you for the message, Adriana. I'm sure it will be asked about in the White House press briefing. Fox News reported on it as well. We are going, by the way, when the press briefing starts, we are also covering that on Right Side Broadcasting. And we're going to have that, let's see. I might even keep the stream open here. Let me see. Give me 1 sec, folks. Because I might try to put it on this stream. Yeah, so we are awaiting the start of the White House press briefing. You know what you can do is you can open up both windows. You can have this stream open and then the other stream open. Let me see if I can get it up here for you. And also, please write to me if you have more comments on this Steve Bannon story. Write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. All right. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll stay on this stream, and as soon as the briefing starts, I'll show it to you. How does that sound? Does that sound like a plan? So we can keep talking about this until the briefing starts. Wonderful. This should work. I think it'll work. We'll see. All right. So we're going to stick around here, and when the briefing starts, there should be some questions about this statement. So I'll just show the briefing on this channel, and we're also showing it on this stream and on another stream on Right Side Broadcasting as well. So you can stick here and see the briefing. TAP Gaming says, the left isn't so much mad because Trump is president. They are mad because they've lost their power. So they've taken to making up anything that makes them look legit again, but all they got to offer is Pelosi, please. So we are covering this story. Oh, I'm sorry. Hamfried writes in, Bannon is a loose cannon, and after he was let go, he has been all in on the Bannon train. Just watch Breitbart on their anti-Ivanka crusade and all the foolish stuff he said about winning in Alabama. He is paraded around as if he won everything in the election, but no Trump train without Trump, and his results after leaving the White House speaks for itself. That's from our viewer, Hamfried. Oh, and a viewer, Buzzy Ann, sent me some statements that she had seen from Sarah Sanders, further statements. I saw this too. I think I saw the same report as you. Let me pull it up here. Oops, that's the press briefing. That's not what I wanted to show. I want to show this. Why is it doing that? I'm so confused here. Let's see. Is this going to work? Hang on one sec, guys. That's not what I want. I want this. Wait a second. There we go. Okay. So there's the statement from Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. But I want to get you. Here it is. This, I think, is the other comments. So this is somebody, Todd Gilman from Dallas News. It's a message to him, and it says, passing along more from the White House. This book is filled with false and misleading accounts from individuals who have no access from the White House. This is what Sarah Sanders reportedly said. This book is filled with false and misleading accounts from individuals who have no access or influence with the White House. Participating in a book that can only be described as trashy tabloid fiction exposes their sad, desperate attempts at relevancy. I think she's talking about Bannon there. Stephanie Grisham, who's the communications director for the First Lady, reportedly said, this book is clearly going to be sold in the bargain fiction section. Mrs. Trump supported her husband's decision to run for president and, in fact, encouraged him to do so. She was confident he would win and was very happy when she did. So I guess maybe there's some quote in the book about suggesting that she did not support him running for president. That's interesting. Thank you, Buzzy Ann, for sending that in. Bob See Your Uncle says, this just in, Steve Bannon gets stuck in the McDonald's drive-thru window for trying to use Bitcoin to pay for his Big Mac. Back to you, Steve. I don't even understand that one, Bob. But thanks for writing in. Sixlitz821 writes, I really think this Bannon-Trump thing is being blown way out of proportion. They'll get over it. They'll go back and forth. They go back and forth all the time. Calm down, everyone, and continue to MAGA. I do think it's definitely possible. You know, the press loves President Trump drama. They love it. They eat it up. They want to report about it all day. And it's possible, as I said this earlier in the broadcast, you know, in a couple months, they'll just be talking on the phone again. I feel bad, though, because this is going to dominate the news all day. And then, like, no one's going to talk about the Iran stuff or other important issues because they just love drama in the press. They love drama, President Trump drama in the mainstream media. A little story here I'm just seeing a report of. Let me see if I can get this up for you here. So this is just in. Paul Manafort sues Special Counsel Robert Mueller, Deputy Attorney Rod Rosenstein in the Justice Department. This is just in here. Let's read this story while we're waiting for the briefing to start. It says, Manafort sues Mueller, Rosenstein, Department of Justice, and it says, former Trump campaign deputy chairman Paul Manafort has sued special counsel Robert Mueller, Rosenstein, and the U.S. Department of Justice. It doesn't say what for. I'm seeing a report on CNN that says he's suing the Department of Justice, challenging Mueller's authority, saying the Justice Department broke the law in appointing Mueller, questions the breadth of the probe. I wonder if he's suing and saying something like, that there has to be a special prosecutor can only be appointed when there's some suspicion of a crime, a reasonable suspicion of a crime, and that collusion isn't a crime, so the prosecutor shouldn't have been appointed. I'm not sure. Can I find anything else? Here's another point about this lawsuit, which we're just seeing a report of. Just seeing this report right now that Paul Manafort has sued Robert Mueller, Rod Rosenstein, and the U.S. Department of Justice. And it says, Mr. Mueller's, I guess this is from the court document, Mr. Mueller's investigation of Mr. Manafort has extended far beyond links and or connection between the Russian government and individuals associated with the campaign of President Donald Trump. The investigation is focused on Mr. Manafort's offshore business dealings that date back to as early as 2005, about a decade before the Trump presidential campaign launched, and have been known to the United States government for many years. So one thing he's suing over is saying when Mueller has been looking into Manafort's past business dealings, those aren't part of what Mueller is allowed to be investigating. That seems to be one part of this lawsuit. And then at the bottom here it says, on October 27th, the Office of Special Counsel indicted Paul Manafort. The indictment does not charge any links between Mr. Manafort and the Russian government. Instead, the special counsel has constructed an indictment that, at its essence, concerns failing to file certain informational reports of offshore bank accounts and failing to register as a foreign agent. None of the charges relate to Mr. Manafort's activities as campaign manager. I'll have to look at this whole complaint later, but it seems that Manafort is saying that Mueller is overstepping his bounds in investigating some of these things he's investigating, and also that maybe that the special investigator should have never been appointed. He's suing the Justice Department. Let me keep looking for this. It's a civil lawsuit. So this is just in again. Manafort suing the Justice Department and Robert Mueller and I think Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. But very few, let's see, what is this? Here's the actual lawsuit. So you can see Paul Manafort versus United States Department of Justice, Rod Rosenstein, and Robert Mueller. So he's suing them all. Hang on one sec here, folks. And I'll get into this a little more. Manafort, Mueller. Let's look at this complaint and see if we can figure out more about what this is. What's going on here? Okay, so the suit is Paul Manafort versus the Department of Justice, Rod Rosenstein, and Robert Mueller. It says, let's see here. It's a civil action. Independent counsel law is mentioned. The independent blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so 7, it says, this case arises from an appointment in excess of that limited authority. So he's saying that Rod Rosenstein didn't have the authority to appoint Mueller as special counsel. It says the appointment order gives Mr. Mueller authority to investigate a specific matter. But the appointment then purports to grant Mr. Mueller the authority to pursue any matters that arose or may arise directly from that investigation. That exceeds the scope of Mr. Rosenstein's authority to appoint special counsel. Indeed, the appointment order, in effect, purports to grant Mr. Mueller carte blanche to investigate and pursue criminal charges in investigation in connection with anything he stumbles across, no matter how remote from the specific matter identified in the subject of the appointment order. So, and it's here what it says here. Look at 11. It says the actions of the DOJ and Mr. Rosenstein in issuing an appointment order and Mr. Mueller's actions pursuant to the authority the order granted him were arbitrary, capricious, and not in accordance with the law. By this action, Mr. Manafort asked this court to hold these actions ultra vires, I guess, and set them aside. Like the independent counsel statute that came before it, the appointment order of the special counsel ought to be shoved firmly back into the ice from which it was initially entombed. So this lawsuit where Manafort is suing Mueller, Rosenstein, and the Department of Justice basically says that Rosenstein did not have the authority to appoint a special counsel to do the things that the appointment order said the special counsel can do. Specifically, the order says something like, hey, Mueller, you can investigate anything that comes up in the course of your investigation of Trump-Russia collusion, and anything that comes up, even Paul Manafort's financial dealings from 10 years ago or whatever. And Mueller says that kind of appointment is too wide-ranging and too liberal in terms of the power it gives Mueller, and that is not allowed under the law. So Mueller is asking that this appointment of the special counsel be, I guess, voided by the judicial branch, voided by the courts. Anyway, so that's happening today. Wow. So pretty busy here. We got this whole thing where President Trump has issued this statement harshly criticizing Steve Bannon after a report that Steve Bannon made some critical remarks about the Trump administration in an upcoming book. And we have Paul Manafort suing Paul Manafort suing Department of Justice, Rod Rosenstein, and Robert Mueller, and saying that the appointment of the special counsel was illegal. If you have comments on any of this, write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. We're actually going to continue this stream, and just as soon as the press briefing comes on, I'm going to start showing it on this stream in addition to our other stream. Hang on one second here. I'm just telling Jake. But we're taking your comments on all of this. So what do you think about any of this? What do you think about President Trump's harsh remarks about Steve Bannon? What do you think about Paul Manafort suing the Justice Department and Robert Mueller and Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein? Let me know. Write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this. 8 years of MAGA says absolutely glorious. Glorious, absolutely glorious. Edward Briley says, what you are seeing from President Trump and Bannon is that they can fight and have words and even undermine each other, yet remain friends. This is showing much to North Korea and Iran on not to take words too seriously. Buzzy Ann writes in, hi, Steve. I'm not sure I remember correctly, but wasn't Roger Stone fired from the campaign after a big dust-up? Yet Roger and the president have been as thick as thieves ever since. Thanks very much for your coverage. It's so helpful. Yeah, Roger Stone was I don't know if it's fired or let go, but if I remember right, he was let go from the campaign, and then he still continued to advise the campaign even though he wasn't officially working for them. And so, it's a couple of you are saying that, even though they're feuding now, perhaps this will blow over in a certain amount of time, and they'll be, friends again or whatever. This might be just part of their relationship. Yeah, some people have also written in that there's a fire at Bill Clinton and Hillary's house in Chappaqua, but there's one report on this from one site, so see if I can find anything more on it. I'm only seeing one report about Bill and Hillary's house having a fire at it. Only one report, so I can't confirm that. But if you see more on that, let me know. Vika Varkosh writes in, I know nothing about Bannon, but I do know he is to blame for the shameful defeat in Alabama and all the fools who voted for more. So again, President Trump's statement, I'll show you on Steve Bannon, said, among other things, this is a statement that if you look at the second paragraph there, it says, now that he's on his own, Steve is... Actually, let me move this down a little bit. This will make it better. So in the second paragraph, it says, Steve had very little to do with our historic victory, which was delivered by the forgotten men and women of this country. Yet Steve had everything to do with the loss of a Senate seat in Alabama, held for more than 30 years by Republicans. Steve doesn't represent my base. He's only in it for himself. So President Trump in this statement did say that Steve Bannon had everything to do with losing the Alabama Senate seat. This is Right Side Broadcasting. We are doing live coverage of President Trump's harsh words on Steve Bannon after a story came out this morning that said Steve Bannon had made some negative comments about the Trump administration in a forthcoming book. So we are covering this live. We're taking your comments. If you want to write in and get your comment on the air, write to me at Lookner on Twitter, at LOOKNER. I'm guessing this will be talked about in the press briefing too. So what we're going to do is as soon as the press briefing starts, we'll show you that, and we'll see what is said in the press briefing about this whole Steve Bannon thing. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about it in the press briefing. And what else was I going to say? Thank you to the moderators who've been moderating the chat so far today. And if you like this coverage, if you like that you don't have to watch the mainstream media for coverage of this, please consider making a donation, because we are viewer supported here at Right Side Broadcasting. We stay on the air thanks to your donations. So if you'd like to donate, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the dollar sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat. There's a little dollar sign there. Or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. But while we're waiting for the press briefing to start to see what's said in the press briefing, write to me. What do you think about the statement from President Trump about Steve Bannon? Do you think it's too much? Do you think it's warranted? Do you think what do you think about President Steve Bannon's supposed comments from the upcoming book that the meeting between Jared and Don Jr. and Manafort and that Russian woman who supposedly had info on Hillary Clinton, Steve Bannon was quoted as saying that meeting was treasonous and unpatriotic and bad you-know-what. Do you think he said that? If he did say it, what do you think about him saying it? We don't really know the context in which he said it. Did he say it in a private meeting with Jared Kushner that someone like Jared or somebody Jared knows might have leaked to this author? So we just don't know. Big Fish 99 says, I think it's all theater subterfuge. Look over here. TAP Gaming says, sent me a meme. I'll show you that. The meme is Lawrence O'Donnell and saying, I'm so triggered. I can't believe that despite all the fake news, I vomit that Donald J. Trump is still our 45th president. Now, some people have written in and saying that there was a fire reported. Here it is, part of the USA Today network. So this is a reasonable source. This is from Lohud. Fire reported, but it's a USA Today, part of the USA Today network. Fire reported at Clinton's house in Chappaqua. Newcastle police have confirmed a fire at the Clintons' home. They declined to give. Scanner report said it was a bedroom fire and it has been extinguished. That's interesting. So supposedly a bedroom fire at the Clintons' house. Thank you, Hank Hill, for writing to me about that. And somebody else wrote to me about that as well. Thank you for writing in. Yeah, really, Rick. Thank you, really, Rick. So it looks like there might have been a bedroom fire at the Clintons' house that was extinguished. Big news day. Okay, we are covering this statement by President Trump about Steve Bannon and hearing what you have to say about this statement. If you have comments, write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Let me know what you think about this. Stephen Blazowski says, have you seen Breitbart today? It's not just a dust-up. Hey, let's look at Breitbart and see what Breitbart has right now. Here's Breitbart right now. Breitbart. Trump furious. Bannon not only lost his job, he lost his mind. This is Breitbart, which is run by Steve Bannon. And you can see on the right, there's also the headline book. Steve Bannon calls Kushner, Manafort, Don Jr. Trump Tower meeting with Russians treasonous. So that's here. Here's the treasonous comment there. And let's see how Breitbart's reporting this. Breitbart's saying, hey, I don't know. Let me read the story, Breitbart. Donald Trump responded personally to his former chief strategist Steve Bannon's comments about family members Jared Kushner and Donald Jr. The statement was released to reporters by Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, so she did release it to reporters herself. And here is the statement. We've been looking at the statement today. So this statement, this story here in Breitbart, it's basically just a news story about. It doesn't say like Trump is an idiot for saying this or anything. All it is a news story saying this is what Trump said. It's kind of even-handed, actually, given that Bannon runs Breitbart. It's quite an even-handed story. It just says he responded and here's what he said. Mr. Calloway made a donation. Thank you, Mr. Calloway, 1992. Mr. Calloway said, Steve Bannon had nothing to do with helping Trump get elected. The alt-right had the most to do with him getting elected, but Trump is an opportunist who reneged on every campaign promise he's made. So a bunch of different thoughts from Mr. Calloway, 1992. Thank you for your donation. Those donations keep us on the air, so thank you. Let me go to the press briefing now. Hold on a second. It's coming on in 1 second. As soon as it's on, I will cut to it. Give me a second, and we will go to the press briefing. She's about to start. So just hang on a second. I'm going to get the start of the press briefing for you, so we can actually see what Sarah Sanders says when I'm sure she's going to be asked about Steve Bannon. So we will go to it right when it starts. Hang on 1 second here. I'm just waiting. I know it's going to start in a few seconds.
Good afternoon. Light crowd. As we speak, OMB Director Mick Mulvaney and White House Director of Legislative Affairs Mark Short are on Capitol Hill participating in ongoing budget negotiations with congressional leaders. The president urges Democrats to adhere to the so-called Schumer rule and not hold the government hostage in an attempt to advance a radical political agenda. We must fully fund our military and ensure our brave men and women in uniform have the resources they need. They're always there for our country, and we must not let partisan bickering get in the way of the government taking care of them. The president wants a clean funding bill that fulfills our obligations, takes care of our military, and keeps our people safe. And with that, I'll take your questions. Cecilia.
Thank you, Sarah. The president says that when Steve Bannon was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. Does he feel betrayed by Steve Bannon? Does he regret hiring him?
I think the president's statement is extremely clear what his position on Mr. Bannon is. It was pretty lengthy and pretty detailed, and there's not really much to clarify or to add.
But is there regret there? I mean, he says a lot in this book, and they did have a long and close working relationship. So is there a sense of betrayal?
Well, once again, I think the president's statement fully addresses what his position and what his relationship with Mr. Bannon is. April?
Sarah, when was the last time the president talked to Steve Bannon? And this is a serious question. Is the president now blocking Steve Bannon from calling his cell phone?
I'm not aware that he was calling his cell phone, but I believe the last conversation took place at the first part of December.
And what does this do to the base? That these two powerhouses are fighting the Republican Party. What does this do to the president's base?
I don't think it does anything to the president's base. The base and the people that supported this president supported the president and supported his agenda. Those things haven't changed. The president's still exactly who he was yesterday as he was 2 years ago when he started out on the campaign trail. His agenda hasn't changed, and he's continuing to fight for and push for that agenda. And I think the base is extremely excited and happy with the job that this president has done in his first year in office. Look at all he's accomplished. I think they're pretty happy with where he is. Peter?
Distinct following. Steve Bannon has a distinct following, the alt-right, and some people who may not necessarily be for the other, people who are xenophobic. What happens there?
I think that's a question you're going to have to ask Steve Bannon. The president's base is very solid. It hasn't changed because the president hasn't changed and his agenda hasn't changed. And we're continuing to accomplish a lot of the things that were on the president's agenda as we did last year. And we're going to do a lot more this year as we move into the beginning of 2018. Peter?
A couple questions. I'll try to make these simple. First, did the president's
You don't think I can handle the hard ones?
Did the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., commit treason?
I think that is a ridiculous accusation and one that I'm pretty sure we've addressed many times from here before. And if that's in reference to comments made by Mr. Bannon, I'd refer you back to the ones that he made previously on 60 Minutes, where he called the collusion with Russia about this president a total farce. So I think I would look back at that. If anybody's been inconsistent, it's been him. Certainly hasn't been the president or this administration.
Follow up on that. Did the president meet any of Donald Trump Jr.'s guests at that June 2016 Trump Tower meeting on that day?
As the president has stated many times, no, and he wasn't part or aware of that. John Decker?
If I can ask you, after the tweet about nuclear threats, the nuclear button tweet, should Americans be concerned about the president's mental fitness, that he appears to be speaking so lightly about threats regarding the nuclear button?
I think the president and the people of this country should be concerned about the mental fitness of the leader of North Korea. He's made repeated threats. He's tested missiles time and time again for years. And this is a president who's not going to cower down and is not going to be weak and is going to make sure that he does what he's promised to do, and that's stand up and protect the American people. Sorry, Peter, I'm going to keep moving.
But
John?
isn't it possible that he could misinterpret that? You said he's unpredictable, so couldn't he misinterpret a tweet like that if he's so unpredictable?
I don't think it's. I didn't say that. I think it's extremely clear what the president's position is, and our position on North Korea hasn't changed since the beginning. This is a president who is committed to protecting Americans and protecting the people of this country, and he's not going to back down from that. John?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. It's a very harsh statement that the president put out today, and it's not the first time that Steve Bannon has been topic A here at the White House briefing. The last time, as you made reference to, was after his interview on 60 Minutes. And during that White House press briefing on September the 11th, when a series of questions were asked of you at the time, you were pretty much hands-off in terms of going after Steve Bannon. The president didn't really respond in any particular way to the 60 Minutes interview. What's changed? What's changed between then and now after the interview that he apparently did with Michael Wolff for his book?
Look, once again, I think the president and his feelings toward Mr. Bannon are very clear in his statement, and there's really not much else to add beyond that. I don't think there's much gray area in what his feelings are. Francesca?
Thank you, Sarah. But to pick up on that, this is a pretty dramatic falling out between the president and someone who worked on his campaign and also worked in this White House very close to him every day. And so I think everyone is wondering what led to this quite dramatic falling out, and was it the loss of Roy Moore in that Senate race that was mentioned in the statement? You mentioned that they had last talked in early December? Is this a direct response to Steve Bannon calling the president's son unpatriotic and saying that he committed treason?
I think there are a number of factors that played in. I would certainly think that going after the president's son in an absolutely outrageous and unprecedented way is probably not the best way to curry favor with anybody. Ashley?
You mentioned the statement the president put out. It was very harsh, and it basically says the entire book is fiction. That said, a note explaining how the book came to be said that the authors conducted interviews for 18 months, including many with the president, spoke to over 200 people, many of the president's top aides and people.
He never actually sat down with the president, just to be very clear.
Questions. Did they ever speak on
Since the president? There was one brief conversation that had nothing to do originally with the book. It was, I think, around 5 to 7 minutes in total since the president's taken office, and that's the only interaction that he's had. That's the only interaction that the president has had with Michael Wolff since he took office.
If you could reconcile the president's statement with the author's statement about how the book came to be.
I'm not sure what the author's statement is on how the book came to be. I know that the book has a lot of things so far of what we've seen that are completely untrue. You have many people that have quotes that are sourced to them that are now coming out publicly and saying that those things are not true. And so I can't speak to what the author's comments were. I can only speak for the White House. Darlene?
Does the White House have a copy of the book now?
I believe there may be some individuals that do. Jim?
Sarah, the president's statement suggests that Steve Bannon had very little influence in the White House, but the president himself elevated him to the same level as the chief of staff and put him on the National Security Council. How do you reconcile that?
I wouldn't say that he elevated him to the same level of the chief of staff, and I think that in the actions that Steve took, the president was clear that it didn't have a lot of influence on him or the decision-making process throughout his time here at the White House. Margaret?
Because many of us here have seen Michael Wolff at the White House on multiple occasions. We've seen him firsthand. We know he was here. Who gave him access to the White House? What was he here for? Can you explain any of that since we don't have access to the laws?
Yeah, so far, from what I can tell of the roughly just over a dozen interactions that he had with officials at the White House, I think close to 95% were all done so at the request of Mr. Bannon.
So the compliance really, you would just say, came from Steve Bannon. Other White House officials were not working with him in helping to share
any that did so far as we can tell, did so at the request of Mr. Bannon. Deborah?
The president tweeted that he'll be announcing the most dishonest and corrupt media awards of the year Monday at 5 p.m. Can we?
All right, folks, so those were the comments of Sarah Sanders on Steve Bannon. I have to switch over to the other stream because I'm about to do the post show on the other stream. So to see the rest of the briefing and to see the post show for that, we're going to keep talking about this. Go to Right Side Broadcasting on YouTube. You can find the live stream there of the Sarah Sanders briefing. You can watch the rest of the briefing there. And then I'm going to be on right after that. So I got to leave this stream. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I got to go there to do the post show for the stream on the other stream. Right Side Broadcasting on YouTube. Sarah Sanders briefing. You can watch the rest of the briefing there, and we're going to do a post show after. So I'm going to end the stream now. Sorry for the quick cutoff, but we kind of we can't do two. I can't be two places at once. And thank you for watching. You got to see the part where they talked in the press briefing about Steve Bannon. So watch the rest of the stream at Right Side Broadcasting on YouTube right now, and I'll be there after in a couple minutes for the post show. Have a good afternoon. We'll see you soon. Right Side Broadcasting.